Hi, it's Jasmine Wizard, and on today's episode of Quite the Ordinary podcast with Moonlight and West, I am joined by an exceptional artist.
That frustrates me so much is that there are so many times where you just feel like you're being gaslit by the media or by politicians or the government, and it's frustrating to me that they think we're that stupid, to be honest, to put it plainly.
It's frustrating for me for them to think we're that stupid.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just this thing of how blind do you think we are? And I mean the whole really core of the song is we see, and it's if you're not, then you better open your eyes because it's there and it's presented in front of you, and the abuse of power that's happening, the exploitation that's happening, all of these things are so evident that I think incorporating it into your art is the least you can do. And it also sometimes feels like the only thing you can do. It's hard to write about anything else.
Hi, it's Jasmine Wizard, and on today's episode of Quite the Ordinary podcast with Moonlight and West, I am joined by an exceptional artist, an artist who soulfully blends between alternative R&B and neo-soul, an artist who is a voice for conscious topics through her purposeful songwriting, yes ma'am, and someone who so effortlessly blends between genres. I am the artist.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Yeah. I'm loving the energy in the room. So.
Oh, good. You're on a high vibration.
I am. Yes, your dress doing it for me. Honestly.
Oh, thank you. First things first, let's start off by going into your latest track, These Days / Outspoken Introvert.
Yeah.
My first question is, how come you decided to have almost 2 titles in one for that?
I think the first minute or so of the song just feels like a kind of different vibe. It's more lo-fi, electronic. The vocals are distorted. And originally, almost when I wrote the track, it kind of felt like 2 separate songs. But then there's something about them that are so related to one another. It just felt like the way they move from one to the other they're meant to be connected like that.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to kind of bring some clarity to the fact that there is a different vibe. The second part of the song is a lot more kind of alternative R&B and soulful. And yeah.
I loved the distortionate voice at the beginning of that song, and it really takes you off guard. You don't expect it to go on for that long, and in your previous songs, I haven't heard a distorted voice for that length of time. Yeah. I thought it was really refreshing. I haven't heard anyone do a distortion voice like yourself. Is it you that's singing behind that distorted voice?
Yeah. So it's the whole, just recorded the whole vocal, me, as my voice. And then it was, I honestly can't remember how it came about, but there was something about wanting it to not feel the whole topic of that part of the song is really about kind of figuring yourself out, not knowing who the hell you are. And I think with that voice, it's kind of this thing of vocally sounding a bit like the mask that you put on. And that's why you hear the cracks of my own voice kind of seeping through. And then it's not until kind of it gets to the end of the song and transition into part 2 where it's me at the forefront of the mic and in the audio. So I felt like it was kind of reflective of that through the recording.
Wow, that's so powerful. You described that beautifully. If you don't go and listen to that song after that description,
yeah, please do.
Please do. Because honestly, from that description alone, you can envision it in your mind. And as you mentioned, there is so much vulnerability and so much heart that goes into your music. So much, even just thinking about it from start to finish, throughout your discovery, how are you able to get to a stage where it feels for us listeners so effortlessly just kind of songwrite?
That's a good question. It's funny because I don't think it's a choice. Like, you know, I don't think I ever show up to the page like having to convince myself to be honest. I think like the reason I write is because I have to. Or like it's my way of just kind of digesting the world and like experiences. And so like I don't know how I would do that if I wasn't authentic. And it's not always necessarily like personal experiences, but like whatever's going on around, or even like my friends, you know, like if they come and they like speak to me about something and like that topic's just kind of like spinning around in my head, that it kind of translates itself through songwriting. But for me, it's always been a tool to be able to kind of speak to myself. I like grew up like journaling and writing before making music. So I feel like a lot of the music that I make, it really just stems from poetry and like stuff that's on the page, and then it kind of finds itself into melody, really.
Do you know, I'm very excited to talk about your poetry. I am very excited to get into that. But staying on to the topic of vulnerability and talking about it, you mentioned at the very start that it's almost as if you can't not talk about it because it's just what you're feeling. And matter of fact, a quote in which I love from your song Therapy: how can we change if we don't talk about it? We're all the same, but we don't talk about it. So the irony of you just mentioning like I have to talk about it, and you're almost now confusion of like, why is everyone else not talking about it? Like, I know that yours is through songwriting, but how can you envision a world in which we can just be a bit more vocal about it for those that maybe don't possess, you know, songwriting powers or pencil powers?
I mean, I think like art is a great tool to get other people to reflect on what they're going through and also speak honestly about it. I think that's what's so cool with it, is that like you don't have to personally be a creative or necessarily use art as your tool to get through things or to speak on things. But I think like for me, I think the people who inspired me to be really reflective in my music are other artists and like other forms of art, like even like film and visual art. Like I think I was inspired by those mediums to be more transparent in my life.
Wow.
And
Could
so
you give us an example of some kind
goodness.
of film?
I mean, I'm a big fan of like kind of indie art house films that are really like at the core, they're really just stories about relationships. Gosh, put me on the spot to give you examples. But
you ain't gonna give me examples if you don't want to. It's no problem.
There's a bit too many, I think. But I think just like films that really talk about stuff that not necessarily that they're taboo, but I just think social media is a great example of this, of like how often we're all going through such similar things. And it's only when someone really presents it and like puts it out there that you're like, oh my God, I do that too. I've been thinking this, I've been feeling that. And so like it's this realization that you're not alone. And I think as artists, like if you do use your voice to express kind of what you're going through, how you're feeling, how you view things, then I think it gives other people that same kind of confidence and that same kind of like comfort that like it's okay to do this because others are. So yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful, I.M. Thank you so much for saying that. And anyone that's listening right now, if you've taken anything from what I.M. has just said, please take the note that she said, be your 100% most authentic self and use that as an example for others. I think from what I've just learned from you, the best way to inspire is to be the inspiration, you know?
Yeah. Or to even just be inspired.
Yeah.
Like to put yourself in like places or to like almost absorb inspiration. Because I think that really aids you in like knowing that there's like so much around you that can like lift you up as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know that you've worked with a couple of artists as well that have helped you create these kind of songs. For example, Jack Lai and Years From Now. What was it like? We're about to discuss the topics of that song. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That was powerful. Like when I first heard that song.
Yeah. Gosh, that's taken me back a while now. But yeah, that was such a cool collaboration. I don't get to collaborate often either. So like that was one of the few times. What's funny with Jack Lai is actually he collaborated with me on a single that I wrote from my first EP. And this was during the pandemic. So my producer, Jack, and it was called Real Talk 2.0. And it's just out on my SoundCloud. And it was kind of I would say maybe like the more intense, reflective version of Real Talk from the EP, which was very much inspired also about like the hardships that we were seeing through the pandemic. And then the second collaboration that we did was for Complain, the single that you're referring to.
Yes.
Which, yeah, it was super cool to jump on someone else's project and like someone else's vision, and not kind of be the guiding force of what the track was, like to listen on him, like to listen on his verses and like write from that, because I've never done that before, so that was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say is the biggest difference for you as an artist between writing as an individual and then writing with others?
I think writing as an individual comes a lot more naturally to me. Just because that's how I've written like my whole life. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of in your own space. I find it a lot more challenging to be in spaces where you're kind of co-writing. I haven't actually done, I'm tempted to say like any of it before. Open to it. But even with Jack, it was all virtual. So like we weren't in the same room together. It was just him sending me what he'd recorded, getting a very clear insight into like what this song was about and like lyrically where we were headed, and knowing also that we're like the way that we viewed the topics that he was talking about was so similar to what we just kind of talked about in Real Talk, and it kind of felt like a continuation of that. And so that kind of felt a lot easier than I thought it would, but I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to like deliver, because I was like, oh, like he really killed that. And I was like, now I need to match
okay,
that.
my pain game gotta be good.
Yeah, but then I think when he messaged me, I can't remember what he said. I think there was just a bunch of fire emojis, and I was like, okay, I got it, it's good. Then I was like, I think relieved, because I was like, at the end of the day, also like it's his track that I was coming to. Do you know what I mean? So like I wanted to make sure that he was happy with like the energy that I brought. So that was like
he
the
was.
Yeah, I'm so glad. That was,
it was a powerful song.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't yet listened to the song, the song, for me, the points that I really picked up on was women comparing themselves to others, especially online. The men's mental health being on a decline, unfortunately, that was powerful, not talked about enough. Poor efforts from the government to help people support themselves financially. A lot of this as well actually reminds me of Ray's latest release, Genesis. She talks a lot about these powerful topics, and from hearing her story as well of how difficult it was to actually come to writing that, I can imagine that your story was similar. Are there any artists or public figures which you relate to that you felt like inspires your work of being a voice for these important topics?
The list is, again, pretty long. I mean, Ray's definitely on that list. I think she's incredible. And I think the honesty and like vulnerability she brings to her song is just stunning. And it's also so inspiring to see an artist do that, especially on the platform that she's, now built for herself, which has been such a journey. And also to see that journey, I think like we get so much of like what we see kind of feels sometimes like, like one-hit wonders or like overnight success, and like to see someone who's like worked for so long tirelessly to get to where she is now, and then show up in the way that she does and advocate for the things that she does, I think is so cool to have that as an inspiration. There are a lot of, I think like anyone who just shows up authentically really inspires me, because again, it's like what we were talking about of like, it's the inspiration that makes you feel like you can do the same. We also live in a world where often artists aren't encouraged to. Like artists are encouraged to kind of, stick with the status quo and not necessarily, be controversial in any sort of way, even if what they're talking about isn't controversial, but like the industry would make it out to be. And so like I love Jessie Reyes is another artist.
Yeah,
like, really like
outstanding.
I've like for years now, like since her first EP, I've just been following her career, and like she inspires me a lot just because she's so bold and like fierce and like who she is, and like doesn't take no shit. And like so I think like having artists like that who are doing it in the industry and also like showing that like you can, Because I think a lot of the time you're discouraged by people in this industry saying like, if you're going to be like that, if you're going to behave like that, if you're going to make music like that, like you're not going to get anywhere. And it's like, okay, but here's like a list of people I can name who are actually proving that, yeah, we can.
Yeah, that list being I am the artist as well.
Yeah. I mean, that would be, I'm in great company.
You deserve your flowers, I am. And
Thank
I mean
you.
that wholeheartedly. And I say that confidently. You don't believe me? Listen to the discovery. You know, I'm not chatting no rubbish. I especially love Sold Out because this, keeping it real throughout your whole songs is not a one-hit wonder. It's not a one-off. It's a consistent. It's a consistent throughout your music. And I respect you and I thank you so much for bringing awareness to topics which, as you said, are so easy to push under the blanket. It's so much easier to just make a cute pop song that you can sing along to in a car. The fact that you're touching on these subjects and are bringing them to light, it's imperative for societal growth. So I thank you, first things first, for using your creativity and your talent to make something so purposeful for listeners.
Thank you.
In terms of, oh, you're welcome. In terms of Sold Out, your song, I'd love for you to explain the importance of singing about people who are abusing their power.
Oh, my goodness. That is, you know what? It's an unfortunate thing that somehow it has seemed to become like a recurring topic, and it's only because there's so much of it, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of those things we speak about it because it exists and because you don't really have a choice. Again, like for me, like I don't know, like I know that there are a lot of people who can they can create really clear kind of like compartments in their mind of like, this is music and this is life, and you know, they can kind of separate everything. But it's this kind of same thing of like, art shouldn't be political, and like I would argue that like, is that not the purpose of it? To have these conversations and like engage with each other in that way. I'm so sorry, I forgot the question.
The question was, what is the importance of you speaking about people who are abusing their position of power?
I think it feels like a responsibility. It also feels like the only thing I can do when it's so explicitly like presented in front of us.
Yes.
You know, as I mentioned, like I think I sit at my piano or like in front of my notebook and I write when I feel like I've got nowhere else to go. And like, I don't know how to always handle like how the world is. And it's I can't remember who said it, but I read this thing of someone saying like, I don't care how bad it gets. Like I'm always going to imagine a better world. I'm always going to imagine
That's beautiful.
better. And I think that's kind of what we do through this music. Firstly, I think it's a form of saying like, we see you, like we see what you're doing. And putting it out there quite like boldly through music and like through the forms that we can, like whatever medium that is kind of like your chosen one, is a way of not letting shit like just be swept under the carpet. Yeah. Like I think that frustrates me like so much, is that there are so many times where you just feel like you're being gaslit by the media or by politicians or the government, and like it's frustrating to me that they think we're that stupid, to be honest, like to put it plainly.
It's so frustrating for me for them to think we're that stupid.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just this thing of like how blind do you think we are? And like I mean the whole really core of the song is like, we see, like, and it's like, if you're not, then you better open your eyes, because like it's there and it's presented in front of you, and like the abuse of power that's happening, like the exploitation that's happening, like all of these things like are so evident, that I think incorporating it into your art is the least you can do. And it also sometimes feels like the only thing you can do. Like it's hard to write about anything else.
And you mentioned how obviously when times get hard, when there's so much rubbish filled on our timelines and in the news or whatever, you envision a nicer place in your mind and you go in front of your piano and you just release that energy into a creative source. I love that. I miss the ocean and the open view. is a lyric from one of your tracks. Is that what you like to envision in your mind?
100%. Yeah.
And is that something that you grew up with, or is that just a nice image that you thought in your mind that you like to relate to?
Yeah, I mean, both, honestly. I think what's funny about the latest single is that like the track title in itself, like Outspoken Introvert, is really kind of how I probably see myself. It's kind of like self-descriptive, because I think it's weird, like sometimes as artists, like we pick these careers that feel like they're very exposed and you're constantly kind of presenting yourself to people, but I feel like I'm quite introverted and like seek kind of solitude and kind of nature a lot of the time. Like even like living in London, it feels like such a contrast to where I probably feel the most at peace, which is in nature.
Is that what you grew up with?
Yeah. So so I grew up in Gothenburg and
Gothenburg on the map.
Yeah.
Gothenburg on the map.
And all the visuals actually for this track and like a lot of the upcoming EP I shot back home last summer.
Incredible.
So yeah, it just kind of, that's probably like where I go to mentally, and then also when I can just hop on a flight, get out of here real quick.
So how long have you been in England, and when did you learn English, and what has it been like obviously growing up with a whole new language then?
I mean, it's been...
Sorry, 3 questions out. Let's start with 1 question at a time. I'm not trying to confuse you. What was it like growing up in Gothenburg? Let's start there.
So, I mean, quite a culture shock in a way, because obviously it's so much smaller. It's still a big city, but like smaller than London, that's for sure. And then again, like no matter where you are in Sweden, I think this is like a general note, it's like you're never too far from a forest or a lake, or like you always kind of have that wilderness city balance, I would say. And so like that's probably the biggest thing that you kind of have to get used to, is like not necessarily having that, or like just even like it being more crowded, being louder, faster, like everything just kind of feeling... I always say whenever I'm there, I just feel like we're like taking it down a notch, and here it's like it's 300 miles per hour, like everything's moving so quickly, so fast.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was literally in Poland, which is like my home country. I went there like 2 weeks back, and the way I was walking on the street slowly, I walked slowly. You know, when I'm in London town, the way I don't even...
I'm moving so quick.
I'm moving so quick. I literally don't even have anywhere to be.
I'm rushing. I'm always rushing.
I'm always rushing. I go to Påskeland, I'm like... I'm relaxed.
It's just a different pace, and I think it probably reflects in the energy of people too. Like it's just everything's so much slower. Whereas here, as you said, like we're rushing even when we don't have anywhere to be. It's like I'm always on a run. Like, and so I think that's a big thing. But I mean, like I'm really grateful to be in London. Like I love living in London, and I think like the creative community here is huge. Like compared to Sweden, that's for sure.
And when did you move to London?
So I moved to London when I was 16.
Okay.
And yeah, I moved here to study. So yeah, I mean, again, like coming to London and like being able to kind of like jump into, I mean, for the like first time, I think like really jump into like a community of people who are kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah. And what was it like having to adapt and like learn a whole new language? Because that is something that is so underestimated with people who move to the country. Like I know this from hearing it from my mother's perspective. She moved to England when she was like in her early 20s, from knowing like not much English to having to learn the whole language just to get by day to day. How was that transition like for yourself, especially at a really young age?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it was helpful. So when we first moved to the UK, I was a lot younger. And then I think it was helpful because you're young. And I think then you're less embarrassed also. I think like there's less shame of like not knowing the language. More support around you because you're younger, and so like I think it's like even like socially like more acceptable, the fact that like, oh, she's a kid. But I still think, I mean, we speak Swedish at home, and so like I love that we still do. But I think as a kid and like as you grow, like the main thing is like always hoping that like you don't have an accent, or,
Yeah.
like, trying to, which I think is quite a shame as well, because like I think I sometimes like in hindsight feel bad for like when kids would like, even like my parents would like talk about their accents and stuff, and like I would be like, oh, like you would feel like some kind of way about it. Or even like if my parents ever like asked me like, how do you say this, or like what's the word for that, like getting almost like frustrated, or like and now I'm like, oh, like that was shit, that like because that's so like you're learning a whole new, like that's so normal, but you kind of see it as something you just want to fit in as quickly as possible.
And as a child, were you writing songs in Swedish, or when did the shift change where most of your discovery is now in English? When did that change, do you think?
That's a good question. That's kind of like the question sometimes people ask of like, do you think in Swedish or English?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I don't know now that you've asked me. I think, you know what, like here's also the thing with like Sweden, I think like a lot of countries in general, is that so much of the media that you absorb is English. So like your biggest kind of like idols and inspirations, they're all singing in English. They're all like in movies, you know, so many of the films are in English. And like, I think you almost start already thinking about stuff in English, even if you're not even like speaking it fully. So like, I think quite early, like I started writing the songs. I would not advocate for them being great. If I went back and like read through, I'd be like, that's really basic.
Still giving creativity.
Yeah, there we go. She was trying to do
practice.
Something. Yeah. But yeah, I think now like it definitely comes a lot more naturally to write in English, I would say. Especially I think like having learned so much, even like music production and stuff, like having studied that at school in London, and like I guess like seeing through like that music eye in English more so than Swedish at this point.
And sticking to your Swedish roots, a big music festival out there, Wild Out West.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know you attended back in 2018 with the headliner being Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
And let us reminisce on the beautiful cover you did. Don't kill my vibe. I'm keeping it PG. I know the first one is a B word, but I'm keeping it PG. That cover was extraordinary. I love
Thank you. My goodness.
I love your version of it. Like you gave us peaceful. It went from "B don't kill my vibe" to "Please don't kill my vibe."
She was polite about it.
Yeah, you're polite about it.
That's so
you've been doing covers for a very long time. What is the importance, or how has Kendrick Lamar himself influenced you in your music?
Oh my goodness. See, like the reason I love this question is because like I hope it's the algorithm just somehow pushes this in front of his Instagram.
Me too. Kendrick, if you're watching this,
Kendrick, if you're watching this,
like, subscribe, follow, and leave a comment below.
Yeah, like, let's collab.
Facts.
Oh my goodness, like massively. I think like seeing him live is just incredible. I think he's such his artistry is insane, and like obviously like I think it's one thing to make great music, but then a whole other thing to be able to like bring that to a stage and like have an audience be so like responsive to it and connect with it like in such a huge way. And then also I guess like just not even consciously, I've somewhat been like tracking his career, I guess, of like seeing him at Way Out West, where, you know, he wasn't even the headliner at that time. And then like again when he was the headliner, and then his like most recent concert. And even just that, like the inspiration of like seeing artists grow. Like it's always like so cool when you're like day ones of artists and then like you see them come to like where they are now, and like you just envision yourself hopefully having that same kind of trajectory.
I am the artist for Wild Out West.
Yeah.
Please.
Way Out West, please.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
And the lineup of the 2018 Wild Out West featured also Jorja Smith and J Hus. And this was at the time, I believe you're still living in Sweden. This was just before you moved to the UK, right?
No, I was in London.
Oh, you were in London?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you went back home?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that was summer. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm always back home for summer. Swedish Summers are elite, let me just say.
What makes them elite?
Oh my goodness. I think like everything's just so beautiful. Like I know that's really like vague, but like the weather, not always, okay? Like yeah, you can get like the weather can be a bit of a disappointment, but when it's like at its best and you just get that kind of like 25 to 30 degree heat and it's just like sunshine and blue skies and a bit breezy, unlike here where it's super humid.
Yeah.
And you're just like sweating. And then also just like being in nature, like being able to be outside and like the long days and then obviously like pair that with like a great festival and you're just outside and music.
Perfect.
And,
Sorry, that was such a side note question, but I had to know because when I'm planning my summer holidays,
you gotta
I need to know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So now Sweden, you've put it on the map. Big up, I'm the artist. For real. Sweden on the map because I'm gonna add that to my travel destination. But speaking about the lineup from 2018, Jay Huss and Jorja Smith, what was it like experiencing a UK artist on a live stage in your hometown or your home country?
Cool, honestly. Like really kind of cool because like I'm sure you'll relate to this as well. I think like you have like pieces of yourself in both. Like if you ever leave like your home city, you have pieces of yourself still left in both. And so I think being like in Gothenburg and having people from the UK, you kind of feel like, hey, like that's me.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel like they're like representing your other city, like your other home city. And so like I think it's quite cool because I don't know, it's almost like you feel like in some ways you can like relate to those artists more than like maybe the rest of the crowd can in a strange way.
You feel that sort of connection.
But like, and also maybe because like I'm an artist, so like I, you know, like I always feel like I get quite emotional like whenever I'm at concerts and stuff because I'm just like, it's right there. Get me on stage. But yeah, so I think there's that part.
Speaking about you being on stage, that's what I'm going to say. I don't do ifs, I do when. So I am the artist when
Love
you
that.
perform at Wild Out West.
Yeah.
What would you want your live set to look and sound like?
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, paint us the vision. I want to hear it from start to vision. You do so well with songwriting. I want you to paint me a picture right now of what that set of I Am the Artist at Wild Out West is going to be looking like.
Oh my God.
And take your time.
That's a tough one. I think like one of the best performances that I saw at Way Out West was Frank Ocean. And I can't remember the year, but it was Blonde Tour. It's that kind of time.
Powerful.
And what I loved about it was that it felt so intimate, even though it was huge. Like it was on the main stage. And he kind of like brought like, there was like that, you know, like the midsection of the stage out and like had the screens and like there was so much of that performance that I was like, oh shit, like that's sick.
Yeah.
Like I would love to do something like that. I mean, I love like implementing like visual elements. So I would definitely like want to have screens. I would want it to feel like kind of a movie, right? Like I would want, not even necessarily me, like on, you know how like they have like you so that everyone can see you, but like snippets of like visual work.
Oh, wow.
On the actual screens. And then even that, like I love, or I would love to feel connected to bigger audiences. So now, like, you know, when you perform at small gigs and small venues, like it's easy to have that kind of connection, but I think sometimes you can lose that when like the more people you are, like the more kind of distance it feels. And I would love to like keep that kind of vulnerable, intimate energy and have it feel like they were kind of a part of the set. Like I've always had this dream of like doing a show where it feels like people are in the room with me, like where it was recorded. Wow. Kind of like instead of it feeling like you're listening to my music, like I want you to feel like you're a part of it, like you're in here with me, like you're feeling kind of like surrounded. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of, that's the energy I would want people to be on. In terms of what that would look like with the logistics, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We got time. We've got a whole production.
Yeah.
You know what?
We'll get it sorted.
The way that you've just worded that so perfectly that I'm literally looking at you on the stage is mental.
Can you see it?
I can see it.
Manifest it. Yep. There we go.
Amen. And the fact that you mentioned you wanted to have visuals as well on the stage, and you mentioned so many elements, I can tell that you are creative. And of course I know because I've done my research, you are a multi-disciplined creative across poetry, music, film, visual art. What's it like differentiating between film and art and poetry and music? Is there a creative difference when approaching that kind of work?
I think there is. I I've always seen like film and acting and like that whole kind of side of the journey as a form of like escapism, really. It's really refreshing to be in environments where you're not necessarily like presenting as yourself, and you're stepping into different stories and you're able to like embody other characters, and I guess like connect with audiences in that way. And then there's also the flip side of that, which is like music, where you're really showing up like as you, and like a lot of your own stories are kind of out there on the line. I think there is like a contrast between the two, but I feel like at its core they kind of stem from the same place. This desire to storytell and to be seen, probably, and like understood, and like feeling like maybe, I don't know, like since I was a kid, just like that's the only place where I've really felt like I can do that. And so for me, it's, I think only recently in the last couple of years, I've really like kind of embraced that, because before it was always like, when are you going to pick one? Which one are you going to do? Like, stay in your lane. And like, it's only recently where I've been like, why?
Yeah. For who?
Why? For who would I do that? For who would I kind of
Fantastic question. I am the artist.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And it's just kind of this thing of like, people want to box you, right? Like they just want you to be in one place. They want you to be one thing. And like, it's easier to digest than, I guess, if they can just like put like a label on you, or like stick a little description under your name, and like that.
Easier to digest, but no one's complaining when they got to chew on that steak.
Yeah, exactly. Like
they be eating that steak up. They be chewing for days, and they go and enjoy it still.
So I think I'm just kind of trying to embrace like the nuances and the complexities of it, but also kind of be okay with like if sometimes feeling contradictory, because a lot of the time it does, but like I think that's part of the process, and also like part of like finding myself in all the different mediums, and being okay with that, like looking differently sometimes, you know.
And one of those mediums is poetry. I love your poetry.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I read one of your poems out loud?
Oh gosh, which one?
I'm gonna read this one, if you don't mind. Take a look at it, and if you're happy for me to read it, I shall read it.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'm very good. Matter of fact, I am the artist. Would you like to read out your poem?
Oh my goodness.
I think that'd be more special.
Do you think? Okay, yeah, sure.
I think so.
Go for it. Oh my god. Okay. Oh, okay. Poetry reading.
I'm so excited I get to see this in person.
Oh
this is exceptional.
Okay, let's go. This one's called An Ode to Summer. I'm always waiting for summer to arrive. During the long nights, I find myself longing for longer days, but now they're here, I can already feel them slipping away. I can't ever seem to hold on to the season long enough to taste it. With each bite, tears collect in my eyes. The sweet juice of peaches drip down my arms and run down my sides. My body is here, but I've lost my mind. It's on another plane, fighting against time. I wish I could bury my head in the sand, not just my feet. Maybe then the tide would wash away all the unresolved grief over how nothing lasts forever, and some days I wish it would. This joy is too fleeting. I can't hold on to anything real without indulging the pain of leaving and the heaviness of breathing whenever I'm too far away from the sea. I'm already mourning the absence of peace.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful.
I stumbled on my lines a little bit. You got me unprepared.
No, there was no start at all. I had effortless delivery there. That was... Can you tell we've got some serious talent on Quite the Ordinary podcast with Moonlight and West? That was breathtaking. First things first, I want to envision you writing this. So where did you write this?
I wrote this when I was in the south of France.
Wow.
And I was literally going through like the emotions of that, of just being like, I'm only here for another few days and I just want to stay here. Like I don't want to leave. And just like finding that sometimes I feel that way of like just already knowing when things are going to come to an end, like already mourning it without having even left. And it's this thing of like working through like being more present, right? Yeah. Of like enjoying things when you're there and like you're sitting in it.
Exactly what we've been
And then I guess what I do is just write about it. So,
you're like, I got a pen.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to write it out. So yeah, and that was kind of like post summer where you're just kind of it just there's something about like after summer, like when summer's coming to an end, it just feels quite like nostalgic and like melancholy in a weird
having
way.
to come back to London after being in the beautiful
sun.
sun.
Just like having to come back to, I guess, like city, but also again like of like feeling a lot of like joy in nature, but also like back to life. I think like sometimes the end of summer kind of marks this thing of like, oh my God, okay, so what have we done this year? It's kind of like that kind of reflection, like until like Christmas and New Year and everything, where you just kind of, you look back a bit and you're like, oh my God, like time's gone so quick. So yeah, that's where that one stems
It's
from.
beautiful. Thank you for reading that out.
Yeah,
honestly, I'm so happy that you read that out, because I got to be
you
the
got
listener.
To experience it.
Yeah, I got to be the listener. That was a special moment for me, for real. That is honestly a special moment for Quite the Ordinary podcast of Moonlight and West. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Another beautiful moment from your EP, Self-Made. The violin at the end of 4 a.m. The solo violin. I am the artist. Yeah. Are you crazy? That violin. I
mean, strings really are that instrument, aren't they?
I was like, just when I thought that was a great song, then the violin, I was like, oh my God, this is an exceptional song.
That's how I really get you into the emotion.
Yeah. Honestly, throw me an instrument and I'm like,
yeah.
Do you play, obviously I know you play piano.
Yeah.
Do you play any other instruments?
I play piano and guitar. Okay. But I mean, I always preface this with being like, I play piano and guitar to like my level of like using it to complement like songwriting and singing. I wouldn't like label myself necessarily as like a pianist or a guitarist, but it's always been the way in which I write, like, so it's always been kind of the sidekick to the songwriting.
Wow.
I wish I played the violin. It's been one of those like dream instruments, I think, when I was a kid, because I love how it sounds. I think it embodies so much emotion.
Me too.
It just hits all the right places. So I wish I played, but
when I play.
Yeah. See, that's what I should have been smart enough and done like during the pandemic.
You can play two instruments. Who can even say they can play one instrument? Honestly, 2 instruments is outstanding.
It's plenty.
It's plenty. And I can't wait until you add a third. Wink, wink.
You wink one day. Yeah, for real.
What inspired you to put the violin at the end of the song, at the end of 4 a.m.?
I think I just wanted it to feel like huge. Like I wanted it to feel like it had so much warmth to it. And I'm a sucker for like a big finale at like the end of songs. Or it kind of just like, kind of like heading to a place that like maybe you wouldn't expect it to. Yeah. Or also like allowing people to like sit with what you've, like the journey that you've taken them through.
Yeah.
So like with that song in particular, it kind of being almost instrumental for about, I think, like 8 bars. It kind of feels like you can almost give people their own time to like reflect, especially like if you relate to the song. Then I think like it's a nice moment to just be like,
you really like to surprise the fans with your unexpectedness. From these days / outspoken introvert, you literally just switch completely. Like you really like to say,
keep you on your toes.
Yeah. Keep them on the toes. That's the best way to put it.
I think it's just like, you know what, it's funny because it's not something that like I consciously think about. I think it's just me trying to almost get the most out of the experience when I'm writing it. And also things like subtly showing up in different ways, or like having multiple ideas come up at once and just being like, how do I, it's kind of like this puzzle. And then like, I mean, like Rick Rubin is a great example of this, of like always speaking about how like the audience doesn't matter, right? Like the audience is not who you should be thinking about. And that's when you like make your most authentic and most like valuable work as well. And so like, I think I never write with the kind of thought of like, oh, this is gonna get him.
Yeah.
But like it is cool to like see that come through after, where it feels unexpected and kind of like creatively different than maybe like other things that you've heard.
And although you don't do it on purpose, what would you say your creative process is like? Is there a particular habit that you do just before writing or recording a song? Is there any ritual that you do, or is it just get in front of the piano, guitar or pad and just get on with it?
I find that it's usually always, well, it's strange because like people always ask like what comes first, like lyrics or like melody, like
chicken
music.
or the egg, melody or
well, for me
lyrics.
it's like this really strange thing where like it kind of appears at the same time.
Wow.
Where like it's kind of almost like freestyle, like it will just kind of, I don't know, sometimes I'll just be in the shower and I'll just start singing, but it will always be accompanied by like lyrics. I mean, some days it is really just like getting a notepad out and like writing ideas and thoughts down. But a lot of the time, the song kind of just unravels itself when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write something, and I just kind of take a moment and then suddenly open your mouth and you just like, spill it out, and then I guess kind of go from there. A lot of the times, I mean, like self-made, the entire project I worked on with Alex, who's my producer, who I've been collaborating with since 2018.
Yeah, we're gonna touch about Mr. Alex. Don't you worry about that.
So I mean, that process always kind of looks like me showing up to the studio with like, I've written a song, and usually it's pretty much there, like it's done, like start to finish, like lyrics, chords, like it's kind of got a shape to it, you know, it's got a life to it, and then from there kind of just like building on the production, like where do we want to take it, like how do we want it to sound like sonically, and then also kind of keeping in mind references that I draw and like sounds that I like. A lot of the time, like anytime we're kind of like looking at drums and like where do we want to go, it's always kind of like old school like hip hop sounding drums. Like I love the feel of them, and so like that's so often like through so many tracks we'll be like, yeah, that's that, and just like, I don't know, like kind of building it piece by piece. But again, like I find that I probably write my best. I mean, I've yet to see what my writing looks like collaborating with more writers and artists, but currently it's definitely like the most comfortable way to write for me is to write like in solitude.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And do you need that solitude because do you go with your approach to writing, is it very much like I'm feeling a certain type of way and I need to get my emotions out onto paper? Or is it a matter of just like, I'm by myself, I'm just going to write whatever comes to mind and go with the flow?
I think it's probably both, depending on what it's about. Sometimes it's like the topics kind of bring themselves to the song. Sometimes it's an outlet. I think I would probably struggle to be maybe more vulnerable and honest if there were more people around. I think when I'm writing, because I don't necessarily like view it as like this is going to be a song one day. I just write the song, and then like whatever it amounts to, like whatever kind of journey it takes, that's a separate kind of thought, you know? But the only way I can allow myself to really not care that like, oh, someone else is going to hear this. Because then I think you'd almost like subconsciously like filter yourself slightly.
Yeah, it's true.
Or you'd be like thinking about like, do I want people to hear this? Do I want to like talk about this?
I don't want my business to be
do I want my business? Do I want to air that laundry? Whereas I think like when you're just kind of by yourself in that space, it's kind of like therapeutic, you know, like you're just kind of showing up as you, and not hiding behind any like barriers that maybe you would if there were other people around.
That's beautifully put. That really is. And you speak about working with producer Alex, who you've been working with since 2018. That's a very, very long time.
Yeah, shout out Alex Starp.
Shout out Alex. 2 questions that I'm going to tie into one. What's it like establishing and building a relationship with a producer, and how has it been like working with him across these years?
Gosh, it's been great. No pressure. No, it's been so good. I think I lucked out in terms of like finding someone to collaborate with who now, and I mean obviously maybe it's because it's been what, like 6 years, my gosh. I think we've gotten to the point, like even like when we made Sold Out,
powerful,
I voice noted him like, dude, like I gotta write like I've written a song and I just want to post, like I want to release it, like I don't want to wait, I don't want time to just move and this be like a song I release in a year from now. I just want to make it, like, are you in London, like can we link up, can we like book a session and let's do it. And at the time it was probably like the fastest process that I've ever like written and like released a song. because usually like, these things, like it just takes longer than like people maybe would expect it to. Like often it's, I mean, I've written songs in 2022 that I'm releasing now. Like it's like a whole thing. But it was literally that same month, like we got in the studio and I just remember being like, are we gonna have time? Like we've only got like a day. Like I think we did the whole of the production in one day and then vocals on another day. And the rest, like we just mastered it like remote. Like he was just like, what do you think of this? And like, so it was so quick, but I remember there being like a moment where I was like, are we gonna have time? And it was just him being like, I think we got it now. Like, I think we know how to like where we're at.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like non-verbal at this point, like just kind of like an energy exchange, I think. And I think that comes from like years of working with people and then also them knowing you well enough. Because I remember like the first sessions I had, I was like,
nervous.
Am I gonna sing these lyrics out loud?
Wait, so you mean I'm an artist? I actually need to sing now?
Yeah, what do you mean? I gotta show you. I think like that was like, it's so funny like when I think back of just how nervous and like, because I'm like I'm quite a perfectionist with stuff like that, and I think like when you're working with people in the studio, they're not seeing like things finalized. They're not seeing like things that are like done. They're seeing you like when you're still working on stuff, when you're kind of jigging stuff about. So it's like you have to show up and like be ready to make mistakes. Like, yeah, you're gonna sing off key. Like, yeah, that's a bum note. Like, and someone's also gonna like, if you trust them enough, which that's their job, it's gonna call you out for it and be like, you can do that better. And I think that was like the first time like someone like held me accountable to actually like
real
like raising the level. And I think like because of that, like over the years from like Self-Made to the singles that I've released and like this next project that's coming, which I'm so excited to finally be releasing, you can kind of like hear the elevation and the growth. And I think in a way that like, because we've been collaborating for so long, we've kind of like brought it out of each other. Like I can hear the difference in like the production from like Self-Made to like this next project. And that's a really cool thing to like see over the years.
I'm very excited to talk about the next project. We're just about to get into that. Right before we do though, just a quick message. What kind of message would you want to give to producers or other people that are working with you within a studio environment from your perspective as an artist? Like how can they make you feel more comfortable, or how could they best work with you, you know? Like what kind of advice would you give to the producers or the people that are within the studio environment?
Wow, that's a good one. I guess I would say that like I feel like it needs to be, it really depends on who you're working with, right? Because like I feel like some producers will get it. Like if you get it, you get it. If you don't,
what does getting it look like?
Like I think just, well, firstly you're making sure that the people that you're working with are the right people for you, right? Like I think that like ticks off so many of like the rest of concerns that could come up. Like just making sure that you're like a match in terms of like, I mean, not to say that like, I know that there are producers who will work in like different genres and stuff, but like for me, at least like a big thing was working with someone who was equally down to like push the boat out, to experiment, to do stuff that isn't necessarily, I didn't want anyone, well, I still wouldn't want to work with anyone who confines creativity. Like I want someone to be like, that might be shit, but we're gonna try it. Like I want to go, let's go there. Like let's see what can come of that. And then like we can always like rein it back. But like I want people to like anyone, like I want people to or even like meet me out of my comfort zone and not being like, let's come back in here. Because I think there are a lot of people who do that because like we kind of conform to like the lines of like what music is sometimes expected to be. And like I found myself for the first time the other day being like, oh yeah, but this wouldn't really pop off on TikTok, would it? And I was like, bro,
no,
stop. Yeah, but it's like, and I think we're getting into that mindset.
Yes.
And so I think like as a producer or as like an artist, like whoever you're collaborating with, I think like making sure that we're in spaces where like we can be creatively like curious and outgoing and not necessarily just like go with what's like popping or like what's sounding good, and instead like allow people to have a little bit more like fun and play and like let that be like the kind of foundation of like a relationship, I would say.
Amen. And you speak about being curious.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious to hear about your new project.
Yeah.
Tell us, I am the artist. What can we expect from this new project? If you can, is there a title you can share with us here on Quite the Ordinary podcast of Moonlight and West?
I mean, I'm gonna save a couple of the names.
Okay.
for now. Mostly because I'm still just like in the finalizing element.
No problem. What can we expect from these new projects?
So the next thing is my sophomore EP. So second EP, these days Outspoken Introvert was the kind of, I guess, lead single. So in the next couple of months, there's going to be a few more singles, and then hopefully the project will be out by the end of the year.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm so excited because it's been in the works for so long. Like life does its thing sometimes and just kind of moves shit about, and then like music doesn't always like take the forefront. But I think this year it's kind of become at the kind of center of my mind and like the thing that I really want to share the most. And
what can we expect?
I think it's really at this point like, I guess like an amalgamation of like who I am as an artist, as a creative. It's probably the most personal project I would say that I've made. There's a lot of experimentation in terms of sound. It's not necessarily always what people would expect, I think, which I love as well. The best way to listen to this project would be front to back, like first song to last song, because I think that like, I don't know, I was listening through it the other day and I was just like, God, I really wish, like I really hope that people will still indulge in the fact that like bodies of work exist. And
please, can we appreciate albums, guys?
Albums,
where has
they don't get their flowers enough, I don't think. And also like what it, I guess, takes the amount of time we spent just trying to rejig like the order of like how what goes where, like the transitions and like stuff like that. And I think songs are placed where they are for a reason. And I think what this one has is like a through line of like feeling like a project and feeling like it's really, I mean, the whole thing is really rooted in being, I guess, about like self-discovery and also kind of a letter to self. That's maybe like the best way I would describe it. And so like hopefully people can kind of sit with their inner child. That's a little Easter egg that I think like when people come listen, they'll be like, oh, that's what she meant.
So for those of you watching or listening right now, I Am the Artist is please asking, listen to the EP from start to finish.
Yes, exactly.
Sit down, put on your headphones, go for a walk, lie in your bed, listen to it like
experience
it's a story. Experience
like
it.
I think that's the thing, is that like so much of it is storytelling. And I do think that sometimes like with singles and like again like the whole like, although you know I know that social media and TikTok and stuff, pros and cons, right? But one thing about it is that we're so used to just digesting everything like short form and really fast, and like not really sitting with things for long enough to actually kind of like take in what they've got to offer. So I hope that's what people will do with this.
And they will.
Yeah, they will.
I'm the Artist. It has been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
and
you.
As I mentioned earlier, well, I actually didn't say it's one of my favorites, but I will say it now. One of my favorite quotes from your song Therapy is, how can we change if we don't talk about it? We're all the same, but we don't talk about it. That's one of my personal favorite quotes from your discovery, from your songs. I'd love to know, what is one of your favorite lyrics from your discovery?
Yikes.
I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to think about it, and I'm gonna ask producer Dara to pass over the binder.
Okay.
We've got
the binder.
Thank you. We've got a beautiful binder here, and you are officially our second guest on Quite the Ordinary podcast.
What an honor.
On Moonlight and West.
Ooh.
Sorry. And when you're ready, I'd love for you to speak the quote out loud, and then when you're ready, you can write it down.
I think it would have to be from Sold Out. And
Banger.
The lyric from the second verse, which is, don't forget they sell out for a salary. Watch them pretend that they cared in the eulogy. Yeah. Sad, but so true.
That's deep. That's deep. I am the
writing
artist.
it?
Would you mind writing that for us, please,
put in
in
it?
the very special binder? We need to give this binder a name. Producer Dara, please. Brainstorming ideas.
Binder.
The binder.
It's the first time I've been like conscious of my handwriting.
No, don't worry about it.
I mean, I write stuff all the time. I never think about anybody else reading.
Yeah. You should see my journal. Absolute horror. Absolute horror.
Cool.
Wow. It's history.
It's history
being made in the books. Do-do-do.
There it is.
Wow. That
Solidified.
is solidified. It's
Love
in
that.
the binder. That is powerful. I am the artist. Your favorite quote from your whole discovery. Don't forget, they sell out for a salary. Watch and pretend that they cared in the eulogy. Powerful! I'm the artist. It has been an absolute pleasure, to say the least, to have you on
Thank
Quite the
you so
Ordinary
much.
podcast
This
with
has been so
Moonlight
fun.
West. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you. We wish you nothing but high vibration and incredible projects to come. We are very excited. You've teased the EP.
Yeah, watch
It's
the
coming.
space. It's coming.
Watch the space. When the EP comes out, listen from start
To finish. Exactly right.
Amen. Thank you. I am the artist.
Thank you.